Welcome to the Better Outcomes podcast, where we discuss all things leadership, sales, and communication in Australian business. At Better Outcomes Training, we provide world-class training solutions for businesses who want to arm their teams with cutting-edge skills to lead better, sell better, and enjoy more success, purpose, and profit from the work they do. For a full breakdown of all the courses we offer, visit www.better-outcomes.com.au. There's also a link in the description. Now, on to today's podcast. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Outcomes Training podcast. I am here with Paul Harrison. Paulie, how have you been, mate?
Absolutely electrifying. Thanks, cuz. Got some very, very important admin done. And as you know, and maybe the audience knows as well, I am world-class at avoiding admin, okay, until it becomes a priority, and then I have to do it. So this was a priority. Done.
Nice. Nothing like the last minute. As my brother always said, nothing like the last minute. Nothing like the last minute to get it done. And there's quite a few things I find I do like that as well. Like I just think, okay, I can study for this. I've got a test coming up today. I've got a test for a truck course.
Yep.
And I've been kind of browsing over it a little bit, and I've just decided I'm going to wait till the last 2 hours, cram, sit in the car with my phone and cram and just walk straight in there. I'm so busy at the moment, I'll risk it falling out if I put it in there too early. So
there you go.
Yes, I know, world class at avoiding admin, eh? Well, we'll see about that. Today was supposed to be a special guest coming. Unfortunately, they're ill and haven't been able to make it, so hope they get better soon. In the meantime, we've decided to use this time to talk about something that comes up quite often, especially for our leaders, and something we've kind of talked about it from different aspects, but now we're going to try it head on, and that's conflict resolution. So I know you have a lot more experience in this than me. I have I've caused a fair bit of conflict in my time from doing stuff, but as it comes to resolution, I do it on a personal basis. I don't think I've had many escalated up the chain, but I'm sure you're all over this one. Now, conflict resolution, Paulie, talk us through that. Talk us through what causes most conflict in the workplace, do you think?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of aspects to this, and funny enough, because this is something I actually get approached a fair amount on with regards to dealing with conflict, particularly amongst what we might call very disagreeable individuals. Because obviously, and I say that with all the love in the world, but I mean, there have been contracts that I've picked up, work that I've picked up to provide training to teams that were going to be facing a lot of conflict. And the reason I picked the business up at a pretty good rate was because previous facilitators had been effectively chased out of town. So these are some of the confrontational type of audiences we're dealing with. And I'm not even speaking in hyperbole now. There was one particular company that I was working with, I did some work with, and they were going through a lot of conflict. They had a lot of problems going on there that I won't get into, but the reason I got the work, I picked the work up, was because they'd had two other facilitators that had gone through 4 courses. So 4 days of training. 2 days, the facilitator left, said, I'm not working with this in this situation. Then there was another group, another facilitator came through, same story, disappeared. So then I got approached, probably because I'd worked in nightclubs and resembled a lot of the people that I was training at that particular time, and effectively was given the work to be able to train the attendees through what was going to be some massive conflict. But of course, there was already a lot of defensiveness in the audience, so the attendees, and I'll say it straight, there was a real palpable underlying feeling of physical threat. There was, and you know, it was. I can understand how the other 2 facilitators didn't gel well with the audience. This is why it's so important to be able to select audiences that are going to, you know, pay attention to what's being said. But apparently, the facilitator before me had turned up, and he was he was suited and booted, and let's just say the audience was not suited and booted. Okay, apparently he had his trousers pulled up really high up to his belly button, and he wasn't taken seriously by the audience. So that was a little bit of a conflict, but there was a real palpable feeling of confrontation. You could sense the aggression in the room as well, and that is sort of that's probably the most challenging type of scenario that we would deal with. But then very often, so it's on quite a sort of a different scale, which is, maybe two people who have interpersonal conflict because they have very different views and beliefs of certain things. And then you have, and that would just be a disagreement in the room. And then it's like, okay, well, we're just not going to talk to each other. And then you would have the other extreme, which is me going into to do this training. And I had literally a jacket on, a polo shirt, jeans and boots. I wasn't even wearing a suit or anything like that. It was just like, I'm not backing off from this, because that audience was absolutely keen to test my boundaries. I think that was a feeling I got from it. But the 2 days of presenting that I did with them, then went out into national rollout, which was 8 days, which was cool, and we got a good outcome from that, which was fantastic. But I'll say this as well: when I went out to go and see them, it was the trainings were done in a lot of sort of more rural towns out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, relatively speaking, compared to sort of Melbourne or Sydney. And I remember thinking, there's a lot of open space out here where people could go missing. You know what I'm saying? There's sort of my insecurities in my head, man. Let's get those right. Otherwise, there could be, where's Paul? Oh, I don't know. It disappeared.
He's gone.
Yeah.
I'm glad you made it through that one.
Yes, thank you. Yes. No, I was quite happy as well.
Yes, I can see that. Just something you touched on there when it comes to the sliding scale of conflict resolution. Like you said, it can be something that's interpersonal between a couple of people.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that when you get that, if you're a leader, you want to try and like nip that in the butt as soon as you can. Like stop the small thing from becoming anything larger. But then on the other end of the scale, you've got maybe a lot of employees or a lot of staff who are upset at maybe a tangible problem that's so maybe there's being something rolled out in the company and it's affecting everyone. Maybe it's a workplace bargaining agreement or something close to home, maybe a union problem or something like that. So it is quite a big difference in as a leader, you could be dealing in both of those. You could be dealing with a little squabble in the office over footy or something, two people who don't want to talk to each other because one team beat the other, as opposed to 100 blokes picketing out the front, not letting cars in and work. So it's a sliding scale, and I would guess that apart from having a personal issue or a tangible work or problem related issue, it could also be move from like a simple disagreement more towards like what you had, where there was a perceived threat there. So quite a bit to this one. Main causes. Poor communication, do you think? I would suggest poor communication, as always, would be a big one. Would be in there. Well, you agree with that? Anything else that comes in?
Interpersonal conflicts, I think that's a good area to focus on. I think interpersonal conflicts between two people, or two people to start with, I think is the most basic level. And poor communication, I think, is a symptom of a deeper problem. I really do. And I think that there is a huge onus and a huge blind spot on people to be responsible for how they turn up in a professional environment as well. And the thing is there is a responsibility, I believe, and I have been challenged on this before, with people who turn up to work. And I think that we have, as professional people, we have a responsibility to act in a professional manner. Okay. And I know that there have been people who've been very voracious in how they've come back with that point of view, but I don't think that's too much of a bad point of view. And particularly if you go and ask a leader, is there a professional onus? is there an onus on your team to act professionally, or each person to act individually as a professional in a professional work environment? I would hope their expectations will be yes. Now, there's a few other things. And actually, I'll tell you this. There's a term that goes around at the moment, that's gone around at the moment, which is a term around bringing your whole self to work. And the first time I stumbled onto this was in the tech world. So the tech world, they invite people to bring very unique points of view, which of course is important when you want to get diversity of thought process. And that bringing your whole self to work has been phenomenal from a creative point of view. But the other side of that as well is I have had leaders come to me and say, listen, Paul, there are people who are coming in with ways of interacting with other people that just put other people off completely and don't want to get them to work with them. And then when I address it with the individual says, I'm bringing my whole self to work. So as with anything, or true self to work, or authentic self to work, it's like if I go in and I'm just a bully, and I'm just a bully because of my own insecurities or what have you, and somebody says to me, Paul, you can't do that, you can't say that to somebody like that, and my response is, this is just how I am. That is a situation that's not going to work out well for anybody. Okay, because effectively we have to be able to coexist, and we have to some degree, whilst there can be the aspects of being agreeable versus disagreeable. Disagreeable people often do very, very well in business because they will always push back, they will renegotiate, they will not be agreeable in certain things, but there's a price to pay for that as well, meaning you can often fall on your own sword. You can have people conspiring against you as well. But I think that the ability to have a professional approach to interacting with other people, I think, is absolutely an onus on individuals. And I really think I'm sure employers would say the same thing, would agree with me on that, because they're paying people to be there and they expect those people to act in a professional manner. But then I have had people say, well, this is just how I am. It's like, okay, but you can say that, but you're going to keep bumping up against other people. And here's the other thing: anytime we have conflict with people, with a very small minority exception, if you have conflict with people, it's not possible to walk away from conflict without taking some degree of scarring. Even if it's just when I say scarring, I'm talking about you paying some degree of price. If you have a conflict with somebody, and even if you say those witty words and you think that you've absolutely smashed it, and you walk, you said your piece and you told them, that type of thing, you come away and your body chemistry has actually changed. Your adrenaline is starting to flow. You've got that, and that carries it with you. And then you leave work and you're thinking about it. You're still angry because you're replaying it. And we all do this. It's just like, how aware are we of this? But secondly, how quick we're able to get out of it. But you take that stuff home with you. You take that stuff home with you. You're not in a good frame of mind, and it gets into that negative downward spiral. So my approach is always, I firstly want to make sure people can manage their states appropriately, say and do things that are going to get them best outcomes or better outcomes, and also, very importantly, have the skill sets to be able to communicate in a way that's going to resonate well. Because I'll tell you this as well, cuz I think that when people run out of good skill sets or good techniques, that's when behavior starts to drop off. Okay, so if you put somebody under a huge amount of pressure, real pressure, then effectively what's going to happen is the vast majority of time we don't ascend in who we are as human beings. We descend very often. You put anybody under pressure, they're going to snap somewhere along the line. And I'll say this: I think that if we have better tools and techniques to be able to deal with that pressure first, then we start having better solutions and better approaches. And I'll give a stereotypical example. And folks, I don't think this is a well-earned reputation, but let's face it, it does happen. Very often people can have negative thought processes of salespeople. There's like a reputation of salespeople, particularly in particular industries, and I'll do everything I can to change that perception, and that's what I will continue to see as sort of my life's work in Australia, certainly, is but people have negative perceptions of salespeople very often, and I think that often that might come through just sort of colloquial conversations, like conversations and earn, and maybe through media and stuff like that, might also be experiences. You got ripped off by a salesperson. But here's the thing. I think that if salespeople do not have good skill sets, they don't know how to be able to be elegant with their communication and build value and exceed expectations after purchase and all of the stuff. That's when we start to descend, which is the salesperson feels like they're under pressure. They have to get their numbers done by the end of the quarter, which is perfectly normal. That's how businesses operate. Then effectively what happens is they can start going to more negative approaches to get the deal done. Okay. And I think that the inability very often for us to manage ourselves and our own state and how we interact with people, I think that's a big cause of conflict. And because it takes two to tango, as a minimum, it takes two to tango. And then the other side is that very often people don't have the right techniques and tools to be able to interact in the best possible way. Because I think that if you remove options from human beings, we tend to descend. If you give people options and the skill sets to get the best outcome, then they can get to that positive upward spiral. And you think about it. You think about humanity. If we're two countries and we have a disagreement, what do we start off with? We start off with negotiations. We sit down, we negotiate, we try to negotiate. If we don't find that common ground and that pressure gets put more on us, what do we descend into? We descend into war. Okay, and it's like, that's what I reckon very often is with that human behavior, too much pressure, pressure to get an outcome, a particular outcome. We don't ascend to better things. We descend very often. So again, those skill sets with regards to controlling ourselves in the workplace environment, being responsible for how we turn up to do what we need to do. And thirdly, having different skills to be able to communicate differently in a way that's going to resonate with your target audience, more than often than not, is going to make sure that you avoid conflict. I think those are big things. So that was probably a long answer to a short question, my brother.
Always is. Always is. Nice and deep, mate. Nice and deep. Couple of takeaways from that, where you talk about how people turn up and bring their whole self. This is me. This is what I'm going to be. And if you find that you're regularly in conflict with other people and you don't understand why, chances are it's you. You know what I mean? Chances are it's you. You'll have to try and have a good think about what you're doing, be a bit more self-aware of what you're putting out there, and have a think about why you're getting into conflict all the time and why you're upsetting people. And it might be some simple changes. It might just be something like you said, turn up professionally, and you have to coexist with other people at the workplace. And for most of us, that's more time, unfortunately, we get to spend with loved ones and families. So you have to really think about that. And also, the other thing you spoke about how you would always leave scars on you. If you're on regular bust-ups with people and you're yelling and screaming or whatever, the other thing you have to think about is that everyone else is watching.
Yes.
Everyone else is watching how you treat other people. And as we've talked about before with in certain industries, and I'm sure everyone has the same kind of view, it's a lot of your relationships, work and personal, are built on trust. Yeah. And if you do something to break someone's trust, they will always look at you through those different shade glasses, rose-colored glasses. So be very aware that other people are watching how you treat people, because that gives them an insight into how they'll treat you.
Absolutely.
Or how you'll treat them.
Yeah.
And so that's something to watch out for. And I guess the last point you made about how we start to descend when we run out of tools and techniques, that's something that I've concentrated on in the last couple of years. It started off with my vocabulary. I used to be like Billy Connolly, where I could get by on 147 words, not all of them long, some of them very sharp and precise, as I'm sure you're well aware. But I knew that if I was going to change, and I wanted to change what I was doing in myself and where I wanted to go and to teach people and help people pass a bit of a message on, I had to not only improve my vocabulary, but improve my self-awareness and my tools and the strategies that I employ to make sure that I don't fall back. Like I fall back, what's the saying? You don't rise to your level of preparedness, you fall to your level of whatever that is. I've stuffed that up. But it's very important to think about that as well, to make sure that you don't fall into those traps. And when you do start to run out of options, maybe it's time to back off a little bit and have a think. Maybe the other person's right.
Absolutely.
Person's right.
Absolutely. And Cuz, I really like your observation there with regards to the outcomes that you're getting. If you're not getting good outcomes, have a look, because that's always, because I think that very often as human beings, we can't see the wood for the trees, or you can't read the label when you're in the pickle jar, And I think that very often we just have these negative perceptions of other people, and every time we interact with them, it becomes more negative, And I think that very often it's like we don't step back, and what often happens is we say this person, this person, this person, and we put all that blame on them. And it's like maybe it's valid, but maybe we need to look at ourselves as well. And this is always my indicator with regards to, okay, I didn't get a good outcome here. And my outcome is always my indicator. If I get great outcomes and a great facilitation, great training, cool. I must have done everything fine. That's fine. No problems at all. But then if I don't get a good outcome, it's like, okay, what could I have done differently here? What could I have done differently? Could I have said or done something at a different time? Maybe. Okay, maybe. Was there something I was thinking about? Was there my mental state, what I was thinking about, what I was projecting? What was my issue here? Because here's the thing, if we just put the blame on other people all the time, then there's no self-awareness for us to be able to grow and develop and evolve. And the thing is, again, in the moment, it feels very validating to put blame on somebody else. It really does, because we feel like we're right in that situation. And we might be right, but again, is that the best way of dealing with it? If you have to keep working with that person, I think that very often if you have big conflict with people, it's like, okay, how can I make this change? Okay, because if I'm thinking about it during the night or what have you, then they're renting space in my head, and that's not where I want to be. And I think that there are some people who are bullies. I think that there are some people. I think they're in a minority. I think that there are some people who, through their own shortcomings, they want to rile other people up. Particularly people who, can't do anything negatively to them. But I think that sticks as well, man. I think that people see it. It's like, and you will pay a price. And I think back to my career there were a few people, I would say maybe just one person I was thinking about who was a genuine bully. And, but he's paying the price every single day now. He's paying the price. I know he is. I'm not in contact with him or anything like that, but he was business-wise, he was quite good, but he was legitimately a bully, and he paid the price. He's paying the price for it every day. And I don't think you can even see it, but it's part of that whole wind-up culture, that type of thing, And I think the vast majority of it comes to people just communicating very differently. I think, most people are well-meaning, but again, we have to get our own stuff in order first, because once we're in an okay position, even a bully, if we get to our own position where we're strong with our boundaries, bullies won't pick on people like that,
That's right. Yeah, no, that's right. And I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact that whatever they're doing, they're going to be doing it forever, and word gets around.
Yeah.
And you've said it yourself, there's some real hard-nosed negotiators out there who just decimate the other side, which is good for them at the time. Fast forward a few years down the track, no one wants to work with them. No one wants to go up against them, and you get left out of the market. And when you think of business in terms of being an infinite game, that's not good. If you've shortchanged yourself. So, like you said, I think a couple of good takeaways from what you just said then was, there has to be a point where in every conflict you have to try and acknowledge your part of the problem, like what you did in that. Very few instances will be, sometimes it might just be out of the blue that you had nothing to do with, but a lot of the time you can actually maybe afterwards sit there and think, okay, I could have done that a bit different, or my approach could have been a bit different, or I could have had a bit more of a think. And maybe I wasn't listening to them correctly, but I like what you were getting at there, because even any of these conflicts that you have, there's always time for learning and time for growth and time for takeaways from it for the next time. If you're not willing to sit there and learn from your mistakes, then chances are the problem is you. And you keep doing the same thing over and over again, get the same result. Definition of madness, yes. So you have to be willing to acknowledge that you are part of the problem, whether you like it or not, and maybe try something really simple like active listening. Try and acknowledge their side and see what, put yourself in their shoes, see if that's going to help, rather than banging your head against the wall. Have a think from their point of view and see if you can't come up with anything else. But it's at the time it's tough trying to stay calm.
Yeah.
So you can think. It's before it all descends into chaos. I think that's a good one too. Learning how to stay calm in times like this can really keep your thoughts going.
Yeah. And I think sometimes also the ability to walk away from a conflict without saying or doing something is, and here's the worst thing, and I know from personal experience as well, it's like sometimes I feel like if in times in the past where something's been done that's crossed my boundaries and I've walked away from it and wanted to think about more strategically my approach, I think that the reason that I walked away from it ultimately was the right reason, the right thing to do. But I tell you feel like a coward in the moment. It's like, I'm not going to let this bully, and especially when you deplore bullies or, you deplore cowardice or what have you, or weakness, it's like, if that's what you deplore and you hate that, it's very difficult to do that in the moment, But ultimately, here's the thing: you only need to say or do one thing that puts a negative label on your name for a long time, and people pay the price. They absolutely pay the price,
Just quickly on that, if you are going to walk away because the people, it's getting heated and the other person's getting a bit wound up, walking away is very good. But take it from me, walking back 15 minutes later, looking them in the face and saying, "Are you calmed down yet?" Never tends to end up being at a calm person. They tend to just go back to where they were. So walking away, absolutely. Sometimes not even acknowledging them. Sometimes just the whole, if it's constant abuse or bully, just staring back at them and then just walking away and making sure it doesn't faze you. Because like you said, they're looking for a reaction. They're looking for a spot to find. And people like that, if they find it, they'll dig at it. So it's
I think there are some people, I think there certainly are some people who try to play those manipulative games, who cognitively sit and think about it. But I also think it's just I think there are some people who don't even think about it. And again, this is what I'm thinking about. Human beings, I think we have a very innate ability to pick holes in other people. I really think we do. We have that. And some people will sit and think about it and try and push buttons. And I have seen that happen. But again, you pay a price for it. But then I think also people have if they lose their mind, they have an innate ability to say and do things that really grinds the other person. I see this a lot in relationships, the partners being able to wind each other up to no end, because you do get that sort of intimate knowledge of each other, but I guess you get that to a lesser degree in the workplace. You work with somebody for a long time, you get to pick up sort of on a different level where their real sort of their hot buttons are. And I think that often, if we don't think about it, we can push those, and then you become untrustworthy in somebody else's eyes again. And it's just it's the momentary gratification of saying what you've said, but then it's like you can't take that back. And now, if you lose trust, I think that's going to be one of the worst insults you can give somebody, is you just don't trust them anymore, particularly in a professional environment. You don't trust them. Love them to bits, think they're great, but just don't trust them. It's like that trust is so important, Joe. It really is.
Yeah, especially in some industries. If you were to drop that, if you get to the point in my industry around my crew where someone said they didn't trust you, you might as well pack your bags.
Absolute 100%. When you're watching each other's backs and stuff like that. I know in the nightclub industry as well, particularly in security in the nightclub industry, if you get a reputation of being somebody who's not trustworthy, it's like people don't want to work with you. It's too much to risk.
Yeah. Yeah, word gets around, But
More now than ever. More now than ever.
Absolutely. It's even though the world's getting bigger and bigger, communication wise, it's getting very small. It's very tight. So the way you treat people and your reputation will precede you more than you'll realize. So you need to not so much about being careful of what you say, but you just have to make sure that you're understanding the other side. You're making sure that, like you said, you turn it professionally. You conduct yourself in a manner that shows that you're willing to get along with others that you're going to spend a lot of time with. Like, why would you want to come in somewhere and just be polarizing?
Yeah.
And constantly cause problems. There's enough of that going on in the world as it is without untold dramas, wouldn't you suggest?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, we feel very validated in the moment of doing it, but ultimately we pay the longer term price.
Yeah.
You do. I mean, if we're looking at polarization, and there are, you know, people I know who would make a good case for polarization in certain circumstances, but not any circumstances I'd ever want any of my clients having to face, you know. Because you want to, you know, get some people extremely on your side and some people extremely against you. And I do see that from time to time with private clients who approach me on certain things, and it's Machiavellian, and but it's, yeah, you're playing then for all the for all the chips. It's it's not something I would strongly advocate for. Now, I mean, there are people, again, who will play passive-aggressive. They'll also try to play politics games. If there is somebody listening to this at the moment who's dealing with people who are trying to play politics games and, you know, business politics and stuff, like office politics and stuff, if there's anything that I can say to console you, is that the vast majority of people who try to play political games are not playing political games well. They've read maybe your 48 Laws of Power, or The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli, or the Art of War, or For Business and stuff like that, and they think they're playing some political game where they're trying to, you know, leverage positions. But I think I've only found one person who's ever really played those games really well in all of the different years of working with, you know, very accomplished people. And so people think that they're playing chess, but they're really just playing checkers, and other people can see it as well, you know?
Yeah, you can. It's quite easy, or not quite easy, but once you've seen it a few times, you can start to see through those games that they're trying to play. And it comes back to bite, leaves scars and comes back to bite. If you get found to be, or shown to be, playing silly games and political games for your own means, again, you lose people's trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing as well, I think, is a way to be able to overcome a lot of this is see and develop the value that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
Because the thing is people are not going to mess with you when they see the value that you bring to their role as well. You know, I think the natural inclination is, and it comes back to, you understand why it happens. People don't see the value they bring. Going out and doing training is a rarity, you know, and maybe they're not reading books on professional development and stuff. But the more empowered you become, and I think empowerment starts with the individual. Yes, you can be supported by your business, but the more you do that, the less you're going to be impacted by the stuff. You know, people are not going to come looking for you because they know that they're not going to get a return. Firstly, you're not going to react to anything, but secondly, they would way rather have you on their side than against them. Yeah, and I know that might sound sort of, you know, putting it out there, but I see this type of thing happening, you know.
That's right. So therefore, when we move towards, let's think about how do we avoid a lot of this conflict. And from my experience, I can actually not shortcut. How do I say it? I can actually dead end a lot of conflict because I have very good relationships with those that I work with.
Yeah. There you go.
Very, very sensitive to what people do and don't like, because I've developed good relationships, nice, strong relationships with. And sometimes I can really dead end if someone else is going to say something that's, you know, Dave might be saying something that's going to upset John, I can step in and kill that straight away before he says something that I know is going to upset, and then I can have a quiet word. Hey, listen, he doesn't like that.
Yeah.
So watch out when you talk about this kind of thing. So for me, I'm trying to build everyone around me. I'm trying to build a nice, strong team. Everyone gets along at work reasonably well. You can still have your disagreements. You can still have disagreeable people because you end up with a better result at the end a lot of the time with these disagreeable people.
Yeah.
Nice, clear, direct lines of communication. Strong relationships, clear communication, try and keep everyone on the same page. Making sure that if there is problems, you get on it pretty quick while it's still little. Don't let it fester. Sometimes it might be the best thing is just separate the two. You go and stand over there in that corner, you go stand over there in that corner, and we'll come back and have a coffee at Smoko. But sometimes that's the best thing, let people cool off. But making sure it's not yourself, so being self-aware of what you're doing as well as another one, and making sure that you're not only actively listening to the other side and what their problem is, but you're being self-aware enough to be able to change your behavior to stop whatever conflict's there. So that's what I'm always actively trying to do, because I know that I spend all my time around these people, and like we talked about, I need to be able to trust them all, and they need to be able to trust me. So it's very important as far as I'm concerned. So anything else you can add to that, or you want to take a part?
Yeah, no, I think that's important. What I try to do, mate, personally, I will try and give myself a reason why this person's acting like that. And I know I've said it before, but there's often, if I'm driving along and somebody pulls out in front of me and I hit the brakes, and it's like my internal dialogue is they're texting, they don't care about my life, they're this, they're that, the next thing. It gives me all that negative projection, that adrenaline just ruins my body, and then, what have you. But if I'm thinking, this person's pulled out, I've hit the brakes, and my internal dialogue is, I hope that person is okay because they must have their child sick in the car or what have you, trying to get to the hospital, that keeps me in a much more resourceful state. So if I'm thinking, and I've only become clear of this as I got older, is that I start to realize a lot of the time that people's conflict with me is not about me. It's not about me. It's about somebody maybe who looks like me or speaks like me, or I am what looks like their enemy. But it's not actually about me. So, and it's so easy to take it personally and fire back. But there have been people, and again, working with beautiful people, so many legends, so many legends. And you start to see, you get a full day of working with them, there's full immersion and stuff like that. But you start realizing it's like, I have to control my state. And one of the things I do as well is if I'm dealing with somebody who really has an issue, what I try to say to myself is I am really sorry that you had to go through what you had to go through to form this opinion of me, or of somebody who looks like me, or somebody who or you had to go through what you had to go through to get that view of the world. I really do. I'm because I know that we carry this stuff around with us. Yeah. And if I can, it's not easy to do. It really is not easy to do, because your body wants to go back and you want to justify your situation and tell them that they're wrong. But it's like, if I can say to myself, if I can understand this reaction I'm seeing from them now, firstly, it's got nothing to do with me. And only over time did I come to realize that for real. But secondly, can I imagine what you had to go through to start to form this way of interacting with the world? It wasn't something good. And here's the worst thing, is when we act badly, we carry ourselves around. We're the only person who's with us 24/7. We're the only person who's with us 24/7. So if that person went through that to formulate that way, and that's how they're interacting with the world, there is a lot of pain that person's going through. And again, I'm not saying this is easy to do, but it's easier than rocking back up and trying to get into finding the moral high ground for my degree of outrage here. So yeah, I try to tell myself why people act like that. Why are they acting like this towards me? And the more I've looked for it, the more I've found proof that it has got nothing to do with me. It really hasn't. It's just a way that they feel that maybe it's somebody who they've had an interaction with in the past, or I remind them of somebody or something like that. and that can often be a knee-jerk reaction from their point of view. But understanding this is a lot bigger than just me or me in that situation.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to say as well is one thing I do hear a lot when I'm talking about conflict resolution and dealing with people who are conflicting and stuff like that is you do find often that people who are very disagreeable can be very, very good in business. And often I hear from my clients with regards to, Paul, we've got a real high performer, but they're a nightmare around other people. And I think it's important to consider that, because as a leader, you have a couple of options there. If you've got somebody who's who's overperforming, but is a nightmare on other people, I think that very often, of course, there's always going to be nuance around this. I think that the negative impact that person can have on other people could far outweigh their contribution very often. It's worth considering that. Now, there might be ways of mitigating this. Working from home for that individual, or for everybody now, working from home might be an aspect where they can minimize the impact, which is good. But everybody's replaceable. Everybody is replaceable. Now, the question is it enough of a priority to replace that person if they really are that much of a pain in the neck, so to speak? Because there will be a cost to pay on there. Or, do you provide training for people to be able to, blank that person out or what have you? But it is something to deal with, I would say, because that problem seldom gets smaller; it gets bigger. And again, how exactly to deal with that, there's always nuance in that. But it's worth paying attention to, because there's a perception out there amongst people who might be impacted by negative behaviors that this person is too valuable to the business to let them go. And certainly I've seen circumstances, there's clients of mine who have that circumstance at the moment, but how much of a pain are they? Is there something, or would they be open to changing? Would there be something we could do to mitigate the impact on the rest of the team? So there are different ways and means of being able to deal with this. Those difficult behaviors, people illustrating difficult behaviors, very often is coming out from somewhere else. And, even down to different beliefs over, how we communicate with each other can cause conflict with people. So, yeah.
Simple communication stuff can set off big chain of events.
Yeah.
Big chain of events. So it all comes back to those basics you talk about, doesn't it? It's always coming back to the fundamentals of, communication and seeing the world from other people's point of view. Always a couple of good ones to start with, I would suggest. And
being okay with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that the vast majority of people are not. And I think we've all been through stages where people are not their own best mate. They really are not. I mean, listen, we've all been through this, and because you and I have been on this journey for a number of years now, and every day it's about learning, developing, and evolving and growing. But there are things that people will say to themselves that they would never dream of saying to somebody else, and it's a rough place to be, And certainly I spent many years in that world, in that absolute world, and whilst I'd like to think I didn't project it too much. It was stuff you swallow down. You swallow down. It doesn't put you in a resourceful state. And that there's certain times where, nope, this is getting too much. I've got to get out, and I've got to, I'm not fit for human consumption. That used to be my saying. It's like, I'm not fit for human consumption right now. I'm not in a good place, just before I say or do anything that I then regret. But I think the vast majority, there's so much work we can all do on ourselves. And that is the foundation of taking that accountability for ourselves. And then, because then over the longer term, you just start having a happier life, You start having and providing more value and doing things better,
That's right. And learning to talk to yourself like you talk to your best mate.
Yeah.
Or someone that you love is probably a massive turning point. It's a long journey. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's something that if you can, it just festers. The more negative self-talk you've got, the spiral just gets out of control.
Yeah.
So turning that around and getting that back is not easy, because I would suggest that, like myself, it was a lifetime of negative self-talk and carrying on and blaming myself. And it wasn't until I heard Dr. Peter Attia, the longevity guy.
Yeah.
He spoke about it.
Okay.
He spoke about how he could have a trade as being a plasterer, because as he grew up, he punched so many holes in the walls and was fixing holes that it could have been his sideline business. But he finally got a therapist to help him, and what he had to do was, I think he even had his inner self-talk was named the chairman of the board or something, because he used to run everything and he'd throw chairs through the window and smash the place up. And he had to, every time he felt negative self-talk come on, he had to stop and talk to himself as though he was talking to his best friend.
Mm.
And not only that, but he had to record it and send the recording to his therapist.
Wow.
And he said the therapist was just getting hundreds of these, just getting absolutely swamped with all these. But after, it was a short period of time, you're talking a whole lifetime of anger towards yourself. It was a turnaround of months. And next thing he realized that not only had he beaten the self-talk, but the chairman of the board wasn't even in the room anymore.
Wow.
So it was a very big turnaround. And then he said it was all just started off in self-belief. All of a sudden the switch just went. It was a slow progression, and then all of a sudden it just wasn't there anymore, and it changed his life. So learning, like you said, you spend more time with yourself than anyone you'll ever know.
Mm.
So if you don't get along with yourself, you're going to have some conflict.
The beautiful thing is, cuz there is that ability to make that change, mate, for real.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know. And I mean, first 30 years of my life, I didn't know about that. Really, I didn't know that you could go out and you could undertake things like professional development or personal development or what have you, and it literally 30 years, and it was one of the greatest realizations. I think you can be who you can develop yourself into who you want to be. It's not going to be easy, but here's the thing. You're quite right. It's not going to be easy, but people who listen to this podcast, they don't expect it to be easy. They just want it to be worthwhile. That's it.
That's right. I used to say all the time, don't bother wasting your time judging me, because you can't judge me harder than I judge myself.
Yeah.
Now I've changed that to, well, I'm judging myself on what I was yesterday, and I'm going to beat that today.
Yeah.
That's the way I'm looking at things now. I'll judge myself on what I did yesterday, and today it's going to be 1% better. So when you got little legs like mine, that's a big ask, man. Sometimes you got to get those things early, get them up early and get them moving. You ever see me walking in the mornings? That's because I've got places to go, man. Got to get up early.
Yeah, there you go.
I've got little legs. So,
but little legs mean you've got less chance of being knee barred, so you're okay, mate.
I wouldn't think so, but Dennis got me the other day. Knee barred me. It was hilarious. Jiu-jitsu talk, people. Anyway, Paulie, thank you so much for your time today. We're stuffing this podcast in around the million other things that we've got going on, especially yourself. I know you're busy week coming up for you.
Yep.
And especially for us, as always, everyone's come out of the slumber that is footy season, woken up to spring and thought, whoa, we better get something done before Christmas. So the building industry, everything's got to get done before Christmas, because then everyone goes away and forgets about it till next year. So busy time of year, but I'm hoping everyone listening got something to take away from this. I know you've always bringing the gold.
Likewise.
Hopefully we can get ourselves our guest. I hope our guest is feeling better, and we can organise that for you in the coming weeks or months. Thank you for your time. Have a great day. Have a great week. Thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. See ya.